is Aaron Hobson of Rhinebeck School of Music, and this video is all going to be examples of the Mixolydian mode in popular music. And there are so many, I could have done several videos, but I chose my favorites. So first off, the Mixolydian mode is just your major scale with a flatted 7, a minor 7. So here's my major scale starting on G. I have a root, major 2nd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6, major 7, and an octave. So I'm going to change that into a Mixolydian by flatting the 7th tone. So I have root, major 2nd, major 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6, minor 7, and my octave. So that is the defining sound of Mixolydian. So now let's build chords off of that mode. So your one chord is going to be either major, it can be a dominant 7 too, because you have that flatted 7. So I'm going to do them all in G. So I have G major, my 2 chord is minor, I have an A minor, my 3 chord is diminished, I have a B diminished, my 4 chord is major, my 5 chord is minor, I have a D minor, my 6 chord is minor with E minor, and my 7 chord is a flat 7 major, and then I'm back to my G. So those are all the chords in Mixolydian. So, a popular rock band that uses Mixolydian quite often, AC/DC. So we start with rock and roll Ain't Noise Pollution. So that's based over an E chord. So if this was a regular major, you'd have a major 7, and you'd have this kind of sound. But they're putting a D natural in there, so now you have your Mixolydian that has that kind of a sound. So over this E chord, here's the vamp. And that minor 3rd in there is just to give it a little blues kick. Next up is Back in Black by AC/DC. So the chord progression is E, D, A in the beginning, right? And over the solo sections and everything. So that's a 1 major to a flat 7 major to a 4 major. Okay, because if this was a regular 1-4-5, you'd have E, A, B major with that D sharp. But now we've got this E Mixolydian, so right, so they play a lot of pentatonic, E pentatonic stuff, obviously, but in the solo, they deviate from that and play more in a modal way. So, like those are all modal things, or mixing in that minor pentatonic scale with that, but it goes between Mixolydian and minor pentatonic. Highway to Hell, AC/DC. This one's in A. So the chords are in the chorus are A to D and then G to D. So that's a 1 to a 4 major to a flat 7 major. So you got. And then in the solo, you'd have kind of this combination again. Like, so a lot of these rock bands, they'll mix Mixolydian in with minor pentatonic and major pentatonic. It all kind of fits together in that blues rock realm. So this would be your A Mixolydian, and you'll hear a lot of runs in the solo. Right. Also mixing in minor pentatonic, so they layer over each other very well, but that's for a whole other lesson. But predominantly it's a Mixolydian chord progression, and you'll hear hints of that Mixolydian mode in the solos. Next up we have Jessica, the Allman Brothers. So you're vamping on an A to a D, and that's a 1 major to a 4 major. And you've got your A Mixolydian, so A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. And then in that same section, they go to a G chord eventually, which is your flat 7 major. So very Mixolydian, the main riff. And then it goes to the G. And then in that climb up, so they pretty much play through the whole scale at that point. So Jessica, the Allman Brothers, A Mixolydian. So this next one's even the same progression as Jessica by the Allman Brothers. So this one is Joe Satriani, Summer Song. So it's an A to a D. So 1 major to the 4 major, and then you've got your A Mixolydian once again. So A Mixolydian, Joe Satriani, Summer Song. So now we're going a little pop with Coldplay, Clocks. So it's a D major to an A minor to an E minor back to D major for the verses anyway. It goes out of Mixolydian for the chorus, it goes to an F. So this is D Mixolydian, so we have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. It's got this nice triad melody. And then the melody, very Mixolydian. So D Mixolydian, Clocks, Coldplay. Now we're moving on to some Beatles examples. So I Feel Fine by the Beatles. So if you're studying the difference between relative and parallel modes, this would be a good song that's a really good example of what are called parallel modes. So a relative mode is based on like the relative parent scale. And you can play, like say it's in D Mixolydian, and you can just stay in D Mixolydian throughout. But this one takes 3 major chords, your D major, your C major, and your G major, and it plays Mixolydian parallel to that. So it's not like they're saying this whole thing is in D Mixolydian, you know, with the 1, the flat 7 major, and the 4 major. They're treating each one as its own Mixolydian mode. So for example, that's your D Mixolydian. C. Here's your C Mixolydian. G Mixolydian. So that's a really great example of parallel modes, where you're starting on the root and playing the mode from the root of each chord. This next one is probably the most popular Beatles example. This is Norwegian Wood. So this is capoed on the 2nd fret. So this looks like a D Mixolydian position, but it's actually a whole step higher in E. So this would be your E Mixolydian. So the chord progression in the intro and in the verse anyway is Mixolydian. It goes out of Mixolydian later, but D, C, and G, okay, which would actually be E, D, and A. So that would technically be E Mixolydian because it's capoed on the 2nd fret there. So that is a 1 flat 7 major, 4 major, back to the 1 major. And you have this riff based on E Mixolydian there. So there's my E Mixolydian mode. So you have Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. So I'm going to move on to a couple jazz examples with Miles Davis. So if you're looking to kind of jazzify your blues, if someone's playing a dominant 7 chord, that is a perfect time to be playing your Mixolydian scale. So all blues is in G, so you have a G7 and a C7 is where you'll hear the Mixolydian mode. So over my G7 I have, and over my C7 I have my C Mixolydian. So this is another really good example if you're studying parallel modes, building a mode off of the root, and it's not in any one key per se, then this is a good example for that. So here's the G7. And the melody. Now here it goes to the C7, so now we have C Mixolydian. G. So again, this is like a really good, it's a blues, but it's more of a jazz blues. And over those dominant 7 chords, you can use your parallel Mixolydian. So I could go on and on with examples from, Guns N' Roses, from Lynyrd Skynyrd, from the Grateful Dead, to it's endless, really. Even more examples of AC/DC and more examples of the Beatles, but trying to keep this somewhat short. So hopefully that provides a lot of content for you to consider, and please consider becoming a patron of Rhinebeck School of Music. Doing so will allow you to unlock all kinds of exclusive lesson videos from myself and my partner Carl Allwire, and I like everything from music theory to song tutorials to covers to technique lessons, rhythm lessons, and patrons get to request content and request songs and covers, and there's all kinds of little things that we can provide for you. So consider becoming a patron.